So welcome everyone. Tried an opportunity to briefly introduce ourselves. I see MT has joined us. Welcome. Feel free to unmute your mic and introduce yourself. So MT, you're still muted. So my name is Dee Williams. Hi, MT.
Hi, my name is Mahalia. I'm actually parent counsel for Pelmo Park Public Schools, so I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about the bylaws.
Okay, perfect. So is everyone that's on here now, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your role on your school council and why you're interested in bylaws, like maybe some of the challenges you've had so far. Maybe you don't have any, maybe you're looking to revise your bylaws. We're a small group, so we have an opportunity to go around and give everyone an opportunity to speak. So let's start. I see Carlo, you haven't had an opportunity to speak. Yes, if you could introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about your role.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Carlo Cabrera. I'm a principal at Corvette Junior Public School. Hi, Diane. Principal at Corvette Junior Public School.
Welcome. It's great to have like school administrators join us as well. So,
you're about to hear another one. I just see here two of them on this call.
Wonderful. Welcome, Anika.
Hi there. I'm sorry I couldn't turn my camera on earlier, but I'm so happy to be here this evening. My name is Onika Brown. I am the principal at Mason Road Junior Public School.
Welcome. Let's go to Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia Palace. I'm the principal at Monarch Park in Seoul.
Wow, we got a lot of principals in the group this evening. Fabulous. And MT, did you want to go ahead and let us know your role on school council? Just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Mahalia Thorpe. I'm the chair at Pelmo Park Public School.
Okay, welcome everyone. So this is like more of like a free conversation, but let's start with the basics. Ontario Regulation 612. Like everyone, I hope is familiar with that Ontario Regulation 612 of the Education Act, and it lays out the mandate and the purpose of school councils and speaks about having some bylaws for your school council. And the school council may have bylaws governing the school council affairs, and every school council is to make bylaws, the following bylaws. A bylaw that governs the election procedures and filling of vacancies in the membership of the school council. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on that because as a school council chair at my daughter's school as well, we did run into this situation where there became a vacancy in our school council because one of the co-chairs, just too busy with work, had to like step back from the position, but we needed another parent to step forward, and we didn't have, that school, it's a middle school, so I came there for a brief period of time. They didn't have bylaws, so it was like just this is just another example of why it's important to have bylaws to anticipate situations like that. So you have like some clear, transparent process for filling the vacancy. What we did in that situation was between the executive, we made a call out through the principal for interested parents who wanted to volunteer for that co-chair position. Went through, a conversation with the folks that were interested, and made a recommendation of one of the parents to fill that role. And it was like through an appointment instead of a whole election process. but it's good to have bylaws that anticipate those sort of things and have them in your bylaws ahead of time instead of, trying to come up with how you should deal with a situation when it comes up. So that's one of the first things you need in your bylaws: the procedures for filling vacancies in membership, bylaws that establish rules respecting participation in school council proceedings in cases of conflict of interest. So making that very transparent in your bylaws. Bylaws that, in accordance with any applicable policies established by the board, that establish the school council, which is TDSB in our case, establishes a conflict resolution process for internal school council disputes. And it's good to have I think, really work with the principal of the school in defining that process, because the principal of the school can really be a good resource, I think, in helping to resolve any of those internal conflicts that arise. So laying out like a specific procedure in the bylaws, if there's a conflict, are you going to have like a meeting among the parties to try to come to a resolution? Then is your next step to escalate that. If that doesn't bring a resolution to the conflict, lay out in your bylaws step by step what you do in those situations. So that's an overview of what's required by Ontario Regulation 612 with regard to bylaws. And you heard in Michelle Monroe's introduction and presentation at the beginning of the town hall this evening that due to some of the challenges that have come up over the years, school councils having challenges with developing their bylaws, and many school councils maybe still don't have bylaws. So this TDSB, Michelle Monroe's office, Parent and Community Engagement Office, in collaboration with PIAC, has come up with a template that school councils can use. So that's a brief overview. Were there any questions or comments or challenges that you have faced so far with bylaws? Does everyone here already have bylaws in place for their school council? Onika?
I was going to say I'm going to use I'm still fairly new to my school and I have yet to see the bylaws in place. So I'm glad to hear you say that there's resources available to get us started.
Yeah, and that template is coming in November.
Okay, thank you
Can
very
I
much.
ask? Oh, sorry, Anika. Can I ask a question about that? Because I, like Anika, am new to my school, and there don't seem to be any bylaws available to us. And so you're saying the template will be coming in November. Is that co-constructed, the bylaws, or are they presented as because there aren't any in my particular school right now that I'm aware of? This would have to come from scratch. And so do the bylaws then, if we don't have a template until November, we would do an election before the bylaws are created? Is that reasonable?
Yes, the election is not waiting for you to have your bylaws in place. Those school
Okay.
council elections need to happen. Ontario Regulation 612 talks about holding those school council elections within the first 30 days of the start of the school year. But because of the pandemic situation and, giving the opportunity for those who chose virtual learning to get settled in, similar to last year, there's an extension of that. So as Michelle mentioned in the presentation at the beginning of the town hall, the elections to be called by to be held by the end of October. So elections can be called by that time. So it's basically taking September 21st as the cutoff date. And as most of you probably already know, that Ontario Regulation 612 of the Education Act also mentions that the principal of the school is to send out a notice to all of the parents, giving at least 14 days notice of those school council elections.
Yes, thank you so much. That helps clarify it a lot. Thank you.
And I see Carlo has his hand up.
Hi, Amalia. That was actually a great question about whether or not it was to be co-constructed. So we did use at both Donwood and at Halbert, we did use the board's template that was available. And then from there, everything became co-constructed. So about how people were to be elected to what position and all those pieces, and how many would be in the executive, or if you know, whatever words the council decides. And so at Donwood, it took us a while to get it, to agree to it. At Halbert, it took us, to be very honest, at Halbert, it took us 2 whole years for our families to be for us to be able to arrive at we're okay with this. And in the end, actually, it was very much a parent constructed bylaws based on the template that TDSB had provided. And it just so happens to be that 2 members in our parent council last school year were very much of a policy wonk generally in their lives. And so each of the nugget became a discussion. And we had to end up having a subcommittee because it was taking up a large majority of our whole committee. And so the subcommittees took on the writing, and then that subcommittee sent it out to all of our parent council members. You had to have read it before you come to the meeting, so that when we get to the meeting, it really was just an answering question and answer. But what does this mean? What does this mean? And then it was passed, and then it was done.
Yeah, those are great points, and you've like identified some of the challenges. Bylaws can be very time consuming, and it should be co-constructed. Like some of those details, like what you given as an example, like how many members are going to comprise your school council. But hopefully this template that's going to be available to all the school councils will make the process a little bit easier with the template. But even like the conflict resolution process, you know, there should be like, you know, good discussion, and the principal of the school is like really a good resource and support for the school council in developing those bylaws. So just like quickly before I go to the next person who wants to speak. So the general structure of it at the beginning, just to reference Ontario Regulation 612 and the purpose of your school council, that's really defined in Regulation 612 or Regulation 612. And it kind of like always like brings home like what you're there for. So the purpose of the school council is through the active participation of parents to improve pupil achievement and to enhance the accountability of the education system to parents. And the school council's primary means of achieving the purpose is by making recommendations in accordance with the Regulation 612 to the principal of the school and the board that established the council. So just like always bringing it home, even in your bylaws, that the point of the participation, the point of the engagement, the point of the school council is improving student achievement. And I would add on to that well-being, student achievement and well-being, and holding the education system accountable to parents. So right at the beginning of your bylaws, even on the template that's being proposed, the purpose is there, and also a reference to the human rights, equity, caring and safe schools, and the code of conduct, just to bring it like right there at the beginning, so it's clear. The name of your council, which is typically the name of your school council, ABC, school council, you know, Donlands, school council. The objective of your school council is right there at the beginning, and the membership, what that membership consists of. The parent members, the rep, the teacher rep, a non-teaching rep. Those are voting members of your council, possibly a community representative. This is a good way to form connections with your local community as a voting member, like for example, like a home and school association, as Michelle mentioned, can be a community member of your council. And the membership just stated like right there in the bylaws. So it's like clear who the members are and who the voting members are, because the principal is a member of your school council, but the principal is a non-voting member of your council. And I've actually seen school council bylaws that say in their bylaws that the principal is a voting member of their school council, which is incorrect. So hopefully the template that's coming will make it clear who the members of your council are and whether they're a voting member or not. Your bylaws, you know, as we mentioned before, go through the process of the election of your parent guardian members, and lay that out, the term of office of your elected members, your executive officers, and their roles. Typically, the executive officers are, you know, a chair or co-chairs, whatever structure that's co-constructed with your council and the principal as to what that will look like. Some prefer like a very, you know, even like equal kind of system, like two co-chairs. Some might prefer a structure where it's a chair and a vice chair, you know, sharing the role that way. And that's going to be just laid out in your bylaws. The secretary, the treasurer, the principal as one of the executive members, and then you have your elected council members, your parent voting reps of your council. Bylaws are going to lay out your meetings, how you make decisions, and that process, whether it's like more of a consensus model, or which I think is like a good model to have like a full discussion, everyone understands the issues before voting. I see Amelia's hand up, so I'm going to stop and let her have an opportunity to speak. Amelia?
Thank you. I noticed that in the explanation, you talked about how the election process, including the terms of office, are established within the bylaws. But until such time when the bylaws are created, is it then safe to assume that you can look at past practice when you are trying to create an election for this year, because you wouldn't have necessarily bylaws from the year before?
Well, then you can go back to Ontario Regulation 612.
Yeah.
Because even without bylaws, that gives the mandate and the structure of membership and what happens with the elections, who the voting members are, and how,
Yeah.
and the basics of that. So that Ontario Regulation 612, you can refer to that.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you so much.
And also there are a lot of resources on the TDSB website. If you just search school councils, you'll see there's a page there that gives like a lot of resources and even resources on election process. There's a template for nomination forms. There's documents and resources on the election process on the TDSB website as well. So bylaws, yeah, have this section on voting and also quorum, which I love Carlo and his co-construction model, which is, I think, a very good way to go. What is quorum? What will quorum be? In general, a school council meeting, the majority of the voting members should be at the meeting, but what are you going to define as quorum? If you said in your bylaws, like your school council consists of, let's say, 15 voting parent members. So then you need to decide what's quorum. What's the minimum we need here to say this is a meeting? Is it 5? Is it 6? Define that in your bylaws. And another point is going to be in the template. The principal of the school should be in attendance at that meeting for it to be a regular, you know, officially constituted school council meeting. So the principal and decide what you're calling quorum to have this be an official meeting. And as you know, the regular school council meeting is, advertised to the whole school community. It's posted the information to the whole school community. So all parents, whether they're a voting member or not, all parents should be welcome and be able to attend your school council meetings. And it's virtual. We're continuing with the virtual school council meetings. So that's kind of one of the silver linings of the pandemic in a way. I've noticed that participation in school council meetings that I've attended has actually increased because it's like the convenience of being able to attend virtually. So virtual and on virtual social media, online communication, just there's a section in the bylaws just outlining, what platforms that you're going to be using, code of conduct, referring to, again, to the human rights policy, etc. Just bringing it back like to equity in those pieces. Your bylaws have a section on finances, just so everyone's aware, like from year to year, like there, maybe a turnover in the school council. So the bylaws are like very helpful for even like laying out some of these pieces that are in the Ontario Regulation 612, but you can highlight in your bylaws. And the finance piece, there's monies that come in from the ministry, and sometimes if there's a turnover in school council members, and some come in that are not aware of the funds that are available from the ministry, having it right there in the bylaws, just make sure that you're aware of it and you don't miss that. For example, the 125 per student, which is a minimum of $300 and a maximum of $1,000 that's available to school councils, and that's in the school general ledger. And the school budget, it's the general ledger 41,500 is the number, and that's available for school council. So you access that through the principal of the school, and it's helpful to like have that right there in the bylaws so nobody is going to miss it. There's also a $500 allocation on top of that to each school council every school year that's accessible by the council through the principal of the school. It's in the school budget again. So your bylaws can also outline the committees of your council, and maybe how you decide that they're going to be struck. So the committees of the council, this can be like something you could even look at historically what's been happening at your school. Like if there's always been a social justice committee, maybe you can have that in your bylaws, so folks that come in new don't miss that. A budget committee in your bylaws, so that it's clear what that is and what the process is. And your bylaws need to very clearly go through what your conflict of interest process is. For example, a member shall exclude themselves from a discussion which a conflict of interest is likely to result. If you, for example, if you wanted to bring in an after-school club and that member on council is like the owner of the after-school club that's being proposed, obviously that's a conflict of interest and they shouldn't be participating in a vote to, bring something in that they directly benefit from. So that's like an obvious conflict of interest. And your bylaws, just to outline and give a reminder about the annual report. There's the reporting, the financial reporting that school councils do twice a year. The first one was actually due September 3rd this year. That first financial report from the school councils that goes to TDSB. And it's been a semi-annual report for a number of years, so it's also due in April. And if it's right there in your bylaws, there's actually supposed to be an annual report, like a report of your activities over the past school year that you provide. And just noting it in the bylaws is very helpful, so it's not missed. And just a little something about bylaw amendments in your bylaws. Maybe you've decided as a school council to review your bylaws in the template. I believe it's going to be suggested that every 3 years you look at your bylaws to make sure it's still in alignment and still in compliance with TDSB policies and procedures and such. Okay, I think we went a little bit over time. Is there any last questions before we go back to the main session? I think we were supposed to be back at 7:40.
I tried to get into the main session and it said invalid code. Do you have the link that you could put in the chat so I could go back? I wasn't able to get in.
Okay.
Please, thank you.